Well, it's obviously an ironic title. It's about the culture that is bombarding younger and younger girls coming of age today. This book, Promiscuities, is my sexual coming of age story and that of the young women that I grew up with at ground zero of the sexual revolution in San Francisco in the years between the pill and AIDS. And the culture that I describe in it is even more intense now. It's a culture in which younger and younger girls are being really hit consistently with messages saying, have sex, do it young, compete with Penthouse, but their own strong, confusing feelings are often shrouded in secrecy. It's a culture that gives girls the message that they should be sexually available, but not sexually in charge of themselves. And I wrote Promiscuities as a way to let young women coming of age today feel proud of their femininity, negotiate the minefield of sexual pressure that they face, and make wise choices. Well, as you'll see in the back notes, the bibliography in the notes draw on literally hundreds of texts because it's not only my own story. I also look at how other cultures deal with the issue of female sexuality, and as a grown woman I was very moved to discover and surprised to discover that even though we came of age in an atmosphere that was talking a lot about sexual revolution for women, we grew up under three big myths about the nature of female sexuality and desire. And so I did research many other cultures to find out how wrong the information we had was. For example, other cultures have understood much better than we do that it is in fact women and not men who are the more passionate sex. Other cultures have understood the subtleties of female sexual response better than we do. For instance, we have a 4-stage model of female sexual response, and first century China had a 32-stage map. Well, I mentioned the one that we certainly were raised with, that you know, boys are crazed with testosterone, but girls are not supposed to have strong sexual feelings or as strong. And as I said, it turns out that most cultures, including our own, till only 180 years ago, took for granted that women's desire was the more overwhelming. Another myth I mentioned was that this is the best of all possible worlds for women. In fact, porn culture, as I call it, does not give women a lot of really positive, affirming sexual scripts. And I looked at cultures like the Tantra, like the Kama Sutra, like the Han Dynasty in ancient China, that treated female desire as this sort of sacred cosmic force, this most powerful and sacred force in the universe, and as a consequence developed belief systems that really treated female sexuality quite reverentially. I think we can learn a lot from that. Well, the numbers are quite staggering about how we're failing our young women. No culture has done what we do, which is we've placed teenage girls in the forefront of sexual negotiation, and since the sexual revolution we've stripped them of all of the social supports and social boundaries that, for better or worse, used to at least give them a sense of protectedness while making their way on the journey to womanhood. And now what I find is, borne out by the statistics, half of teenage girls are having intercourse. Of those, 1 in 4 is going to face an unwanted pregnancy before she's even out of her teens. Really staggering numbers. And of the men involved, the males involved in those teen pregnancies, 1/5 are adult men. Now, in my age group, in the place I grew up, we didn't actually bring the babies to term. Most of us perhaps had abortions. But while I'm pro-choice, I am struck, going back to interview the women I grew up with, that it was those teenage abortions that were lastingly wounding to them, that they could not integrate. So we can do a much better job teaching girls that their sexual feelings are natural, that their femininity is something to be proud of, but most important, that their sexuality is something to treat with self-respect. No one is giving girls coming of age in this Beavis and Butthead culture the message that their sexuality is in them. No one can bestow it on them, not a 16-year-old boy or a 30-year-old man. No one can take it away from them, not any kind of sexual violation, that it's always something to treat with wisdom, with self-regard and self-respect. I think that most of the women, certainly most of my audiences, 2/3 are female, people of all ages. The women remember exactly what I'm talking about from their own adolescence, especially those born after 1960, and the men often relate very strongly to this material. As dads, they use Promiscuities as a way to open up discussion with their just adolescent boys about how to respect girls' sexuality and how to treat girls as total people beyond what Penthouse teaches them. Yeah, well, all of the people in Promiscuities are real people whose identities I've disguised. And Tia was a girl I knew when I was 13 at summer camp who got pregnant and had to leave the camp. There's a chapter called Sluts that has the stories of both Tia and Dinah, these are pseudonyms, who were both kind of designated sluts in our preteen subculture. And that's an illustration of how even while there was all this rhetoric of freedom, teenage girls were really bearing the brunt of the same old dangers implicit in sexuality sort of bearing down on them too young, too soon, and that they were punished the same old way that sluts have always been punished in the past. Role model, if you're a mom, sexual self-respect. Dads, if you're still married or if you're divorced, girls need you to be there as the safe male gaze to mirror your developing femininity, give girls a sense that, oh, I don't have to have intercourse with this guy in order to feel that I have an adult, you know, male or a male who loves me, who respects me. Let's teach petting in schools, certainly, if within a context of love, limits, and responsibility. Let's give our girls coming of age ceremonies and rituals that teach them that being a woman is something to be proud of and to treat with self-esteem and self-respect, rather than letting them absorb without our help the messages from the culture that female sexuality is ludicrous or silly, or the way that Penthouse and Beavis and Butthead portray it to be to our girls who deserve so much more. It was a great experience writing it. It's an even better experience talking to readers. What's next is Long Vacation.